we stayed in Los Angeles and then came back the other way. I know through back. Usually our stopping point is Las Vegas.
Yeah, everybody stops in Vegas.
So you're in the GIS department there at the city?
Yes.
Okay. So we got a big group here joining shortly. Let's get started here in about 3 minutes. So.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello. This is Justin Meyer with the City of Lincoln Building and Safety.
Welcome. Glad you can make it.
How are you?
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. I'm just setting up the meeting for these guys, but they'll be. Once everybody's here, I'll have them introduce themselves, but I think we got everything set up as far as the screen and everything.
Okay, I'm going to sort of give instructions here. We got quite a few people joining this today, so I'll give everybody a rundown on at the beginning here, just so they know how to join the WebEx.
Hi, Jeff.
Hey, how are you?
How are you?
I'm great.
I'll let the expert run this. No, I'm not staying to run it, though. I'm setting it up. I think I'm logged in and everything, but no, I'm not. See you later, guys. Strict orders from my boss not to be in here.
Yes. Wow. Yeah. Really? You should talk with your boss.
Yeah.
We'll be tracking you.
That's what she said. I'll see if the others are coming. Bill said he's coming. Rex isn't here.
All right, we'll get started here in a few minutes. Just give folks a few more people to join here, and then we'll get started.
Yeah.
We'll try to stay on time here so that we're. Okay, so I just want to give everyone at least explanation of WebEx for those that might be new to WebEx. Just to make your screen full screen, there's a view menu at the top of your WebEx window where you can go view and then make full screen. The other option is if you're not seeing a full screen, up in the upper right-hand corner there's an arrow that points up. That'll also make it full screen. I do ask at the beginning if you could put your phones on mute initially, just so we don't get any background noise, and then we'll open it up for questions at the end. So just so that. For everyone. So do appreciate everyone joining today. This is we do these on a monthly basis. they're meant to be trainings, workshops, just so you're aware. So we are covering actually how to use the product. These are not sales presentations, but more oriented towards specifically how to use the tools. And this is since this is January, we just thought let's start with back to basics introductory training. So we're going to just run through some of the basics of this. Every month we're going to be providing these sessions, and there'll be different topics from administrative training to reporting to integration, perhaps with your business systems, to fleet management specifics. So just be on the lookout. We send these out, and again, if you have any specific topics that you're really wanting to cover, we'd be happy to put that in. So we're always open to suggestions on what you might be interested in learning more about. But since this is January, we just thought we'd start and go back to basics here. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. And so in terms of an agenda, I'm going to be covering just an overview of LiGO. I'm going to be covering the vehicle and vehicle tracks, so getting into how you can interact with the vehicles and also historical tracks. I will also be covering, for those that may be more focused on driver than the vehicle. So one of the things you can do with this product is you can essentially track the driver, not only the vehicle but the driver. So there's a variety of ways to do that with either a iButton or a driver ID, or we can also use if you have, for example, an HID card or a badge that's been assigned, that you can basically identify the drivers. We have a number of customers that focus more on the actual drivers and the vehicles, so it's just sort of two different perspectives, or you can have both. So the nice thing is you can report based on driver, you can report based on vehicles, and then we'll get into maps and map tools. So and events, alarms, and notifications. So some of the alarms and notifications that you can get from the system, and finally reports. So again, these are we'll just cover some of the basic reports, and again in another session we'll probably cover more advanced reporting, but this is just covering some of the basics. So with that, let's get started. So just an overview of the interface. So it is a web interface. You log in and it's hosted. So you log into the system and you will see a map. You'll see a list of your vehicles in the upper right-hand corner, depending on your group. So the vehicles will also be on the map as well. So if you pick a vehicle on the list, it'll center on the map. You'll see the same label over on the right and as well as on the map. You'll have over in the right-hand corner, you have tracks and track points. So this is a way for you to go back in time and view historical information about the vehicle. So when I mention tracks, that's the linear. So you can go back multiple years of information to view, where the vehicles have gone. Track points are getting down to really the detailed records. Each breadcrumb, each individual item where the vehicle moves and information is sent up. If you want to get down to that level, you can also look at the track point. In the upper left-hand corner is your menus. So this is for a variety of menus for getting to your reports. Again, depending on your permissions and privileges, you may have an admin or administrative drop-down where you can do administrative tasks. Settings, there's settings in the system. So for example, where you might want to change your password and so forth. Workspace, a workspace is is essentially where you can define the user interface yourself. So it allows you to move things around. You can move complete tabs around if you want things on the left instead of the right. You can minimize so that things are not showing. You can make a larger map, smaller map. You can drag and drop tabs. So if I wanted this dispatch moved over here, I could just drag and drop it. And then I can save that workspace. So it's my own workspace so that every time I log in, it's exactly how I want it. So it's very configurable based on your specific needs. You can also actually create workspaces and share those workspaces so that maybe you're an administrator and you want someone to see the interface specifically how you want it to be. So you can create workspaces and then associate them to specific employees that log in. So maybe as an example, you might have a dispatch group where their primary focus is just a map, being able to see the vehicles and not being able to see historic tracks. So you can create those workspaces and then associate it to maybe a customer service group or something along those lines. There's other drop-downs. There's a map, so you can pick from different types of maps. You may have ESRI maps. You may have Google Maps. You may have open layers that you can pick from. There's a Windows drop-down, and that has a variety of additional tools we'll go through. There's a maintenance option, so that's primarily for fleet managers that are interested in maintenance of the vehicle, where they can get notifications if the vehicle needs to be serviced, for example. So those are all a variety of menus. There's also a map toolbar, which allows you to interact with the map, which we'll be going over in a little bit more detail here. Down in the lower left is your events and geofences. So there are tabs that you can click on and then go to looking at events. And events might be idling events or speeding events or harsh driving events or those sort of things where you can actually interact with those and see where they are on the map. And then the geofences are really what they are is boundaries. So they're boundaries that can be either created, you can create those boundaries, or you can import boundaries, your existing boundaries. And those can be used for either violations, say going outside of an area or going inside, or they can be used for keeping track of time. Perhaps you're wanting to keep track of time in areas, maybe there are district boundaries or those sort of things that you want reports for your, you want reports based on your vehicles that are spent inside certain areas, and you can do that as well. And then there's also what are called views, and views are essentially what they are is filters of vehicles. So you may have a department where you have a water department and you have a water view, so you only want to see the water vehicles, or you may have a transportation department and you have a view for the transportation view. And you can break those down even further. So maybe within the water department you have subcategories where you have supervisors of maybe construction versus distribution. And so you can have different views, and essentially that only shows those vehicles within those views. Okay, so first main topic here that we're going to cover is working with vehicles. So this is something that you'll probably do the most of, and so you have a list of your vehicles. Those vehicle names can be changed and modified, but initially, essentially, when we get your list of vehicles, we put those in the system for you. As soon as essentially the device is installed, so we provide again the GPS device that goes in the vehicle. Those become active in the system, and then once they're active, you'll see different columns here. So there's last seen, gives you information of when the vehicle is last seen, and if it's a time, that means that the vehicle was on today. If it's a date, for example, January 22nd, that means that's the last time the vehicle was on. There's status. So status gives you information. If the vehicle is on, it would be green. If it's off, it's red. And you can add additional columns here. So there's a lot of data that's being captured. If you have driver ID or that driver ID technology, then you can add a driver name and see which driver is in that vehicle at any given time, or you can add a speed column or you can add an idle column. So depending on what's important to you, you can add those columns onto this just by right-clicking and adding the column, and then again you can save your workspace and those columns will always be there for you. It's just a quick view. If you notice in the upper left-hand corner here, there's a text box. So if you have a long list of vehicles, you can essentially search and filter by those. You just enter the vehicle name, and then it just filters down to those vehicles in that list. You can right-click on the vehicle and do a variety of things. So you can zoom to different levels. You can draw today's track of that vehicle. So it'll draw the track. If you notice here's a track on the screen. There's these red circles. These are stop times. So it gives you a 26 minutes they stop here, 32 minutes they stop here. Gives you a quick view of where they have driven for the day so far. There's also a number of other things. You can put them in what's called a bucket, a temporary bucket. So if you have, again, you have a long list of vehicles and you want to just maybe filter it down by 5 vehicles. So you can associate them to, say, a blue bucket, and then in this little arrow here, you can hit that arrow drop down and pick that blue, and then it will just show those vehicles temporarily. So if you log out, it'll basically go back to your full vehicle list, but this is a way to narrow down the view a little bit. You can also edit if you have the permissions to do it, you can edit the vehicle, so change the vehicle name and do other things like add equipment of that vehicle or vehicle type. You can add any custom fields that you want onto the vehicle, so if you want to keep track of different information about the vehicle, you can add custom fields as well. So a common thing that's done is viewing historic tracks. So you want to go back in time and you want to see where the vehicle has driven. So you pick first of all, the vehicle of interest, and you can do multiple vehicles. You don't have to do one single vehicle. But if the one that you pick next to when you pick track, it then provides a list of all the records back in time that you're interested in. And as a note, you can set the time frame of when you want to see those tracks. So if you're interested in a specific week, let's say back in December, you just pick your start and stop, and then you hit this little hourglass to the right here, and that then refreshes your list of records of where the vehicle has driven. And then you pick the specific days of interest that you're wanting. So if you notice here on this day, June 3rd, this vehicle started at 8:33 a.m. and then they stopped at 3:56 p.m. and they drove a total of 27 miles. And then when you check that box, you hit the draw tracks, and essentially that shows the vehicle tracks. It's similar to what we showed earlier, where we right-clicked and then drove and draw today's track. But that's only today. This allows you to go back in time and draw historical tracks. Very similar to the draw tracks is a track replay. So the difference in this is that if you want to actually see where the vehicle has driven and from the start to end, there's a replay option. And so you go through the same steps in that you pick the specific vehicle, then you pick the specific day, and then you hit the replay option here. And that replay option brings up a dialog here where it allows you to speed up or slow down the vehicle or pause it, and it'll actually drive, go back and actually so you can see where the vehicle is driving. So typically what we do is you might put it up to 5 or 10 minutes just to make the vehicle go a little bit faster, and then you hit the play and then off the vehicle goes, and you'll again see where it starts at the beginning of the day, starts to drive. You can pause it at any given time by pausing it. You can also grab this black box and just drag it to a specific time, and it sort of shows where the vehicle is going. So it's just again a replay option. Another thing, if you want to get into the real details of the data, is under the track points. And the nice thing about this is that it shows you the specific records, and you can, again, add any column that you want. We're collecting a lot of different information, whether it be speed or idle or information about the vehicle itself. It can be added here. And then when you click on the record, it shows on the map exactly where that occurred. Or you can click on the map, so I could click on the track somewhere, and then it would highlight over on the right the record. So it's kind of interactive between the map and the information. And this gets down into second-level data. So we again have what's called smart tracking. So the more the vehicle is doing things like turning, accelerating, it's sending more data up to the system, and that way you can capture this information. A couple key things that are very useful is one is the show graph option here. If you're wanting to sort of see the high and low points of the, an example is speeding, you want to see where the high speeding areas are. It shows you the graph of that, and then you can pick on the graph and it'll show where that is on the map. You also have the option of exporting the data out. So you can export it out in a variety of formats, and that allows you to maybe bring it into another program that you have that you may want to do some more analysis or something. So that's another option there. So working with drivers, I'm going to cover working with vehicles and drivers, and then we'll go over and we'll actually demonstrate some of these things. But drivers, it's a different view. So instead of vehicle view, you're going to pick a driver view, and this gives you the list of all your actual drivers. And it's the same concept, but the one difference is you're driving, because especially if you have an organization that maybe has carpool situation where you have vehicles that are not necessarily assigned to a specific vehicle, but you have drivers that are coming in and just driving at different time periods and picking different vehicles. This may be important that you want to be able to actually see maybe where the driver has driven, not the vehicle itself. So you can, but it's the same concept. You pick the driver, and then you pick the day, and then you draw that driver's tracks. And all of this information, again, is in reports as well. So not only interacting with the map, but you also have reports that you can run by driver or by vehicle. But again, to be able to capture this information, the key thing is that you have to have the driver ID technology to be able to do that capability. So just keep that in mind. But same process. All right, so I'm going to go over to the actual application here. And so this is a customer in the Seattle area here. So when you see a list of vehicles in the vehicle list, I can see that there's the vehicle names, and then as I click the vehicles, it may center on a specific vehicle here. There's actually an event being triggered at the moment here, so that's showing me on the map. We're going to be covering that here in a little bit more soon. But I can see certain vehicles that are online, and I can see vehicles that are offline based on the red. I can see when they were last seen here, so I can sort based on that as well. So based on any of these columns that I have, I can right-click on a vehicle and draw today's track, for example. And maybe I want to remove, since I've noticed there's 50 here, I've already set a filter up for these vehicles here just to show you. I'm going to click this, and it'll narrow it down to just those 4, so it sort of reduces. I'm just going to deal with these 4 at the moment here. Another way is I could just enter the actual vehicle name, and it would also filter that down as well. So if I come down here and notice the tracks here, so the one that when I right-clicked on that vehicle and drew today's track, it's narrowed it down just today. I can zoom into the city level to get an idea of where that vehicle is a little bit closer. if I want to go back in time and look at historical information, I can come up here and let's say I want to draw for this month. I can just hit this, and then that'll give me all of the records between that time period. So if you notice, I scroll down here and see when for each day. This customer, by the way, pretty much works around the clock, and if they do use a carpool situation, so that's why you might see some really different hours here. But I can draw a historical track here and see that information. So you can sort of see they're driving around. Notice the different circles, red circles. These are times that they stopped at these various locations, and I can hover over that, and it gives me a little bit more detail about these. If there's a number here, what that means is there's actually 2 stops, and as I zoom in, it'll break out into separate views here. So as you zoom in, it sort of I zoom out, then you notice there's multiple, but as I zoom out, they sort of break out into different stop times here. So one thing is obviously that you can see that this vehicle is really driven around quite a bit, and I want to investigate actually how they've driven here. So I can hit this replay option for this day, and it's just going to really be narrowed down to this one vehicle, 105, and I'm going to speed it up a bit just so I can see how it's driving. You can see the red path, it went up this way, and then it's driving over here, driving down, and I can speed it up even a little faster. So this is just a way to sort of replay where the vehicle has gone. I can pause it at any given time. I can grab this and actually move this and see where it goes at any given time. So it's just a way to see the replay option there. So that's the tracks. Again, you can go back multiple years to view some of those historical tracks, but you can also view down into the track point level as well. And I can turn on different. Again, we're capturing a lot of different information. Maybe if I want to add speed here, I can add the speed. And again, as I click on a record, it shows over here at the location of where that might be. I can also click on the map, and then it'll highlight over here that specific record. So you can go back and forth between either the records and the map here. And again, some of these are between 2-second intervals here. So we're getting real detailed information in terms of the tracks. One thing, I'm not going to cover too much in this, but if you are doing things like street sweeping, you're doing things like plowing or paint spraying or even mosquito abatement, we have customers, or sanding, we can capture when the vehicle is actually, that equipment is engaged, and see the detailed tracks, the difference between when the vehicle is actually driving versus when the vehicle is actually doing work as well. So these tracks can be down to that level of capturing, connecting up to onboard systems that you may have and that you want to both see a map and get reporting on, for example, miles swept or miles plowed within a given time period, and have a nice report that's associated with that. But so showing a graph format here. So if I wanted to, for example, show, let's just pick speed since I've been using speed here. And I can see the high points here. So if I click on this, again, on the graph side, it goes to the map on where the high points are. So again, it gives you more of a visual representation of where, if you're looking at the data, versus just a list of data sets. You can get to the high and low. Again, you can export the data out as well. Okay, so that's a little bit about the tracks and the track points. So let me go back here and let me clear that off. The next thing I'm going to cover is the map part, so working with the map. So there's a toolbar that allows you to interact with the map. You can also interact with the map itself by just working with the map. You can search by address, you can search by intersection, and go to a location. But some of the things on the toolbar, you can drag a box over a specific vehicle and it will zoom to that area. You can zoom to the full extent of your vehicles. You can click on the map and get an address or intersection or a latitude and longitude. So if you're going in and investigating a location, you can get the address. If you draw on a bunch of tracks, which I just showed earlier, is this little broom allows you to clear the map, so it just refreshes or clears the map. This arrow provides ability to go back. So if you zoom in and you want to go back to where you were, this allows you to go back as a back arrow. One of the probably the very useful tools in this system is called the area search or proof of presence. And it's a little box with a question mark, and it allows you to draw a box over an area to sort of investigate a specific area. I'm going to cover that in a little bit more detail, but that's a very useful tool to sort of drill into a specific area. Could be an address where a customer calls in and is either maybe complaining about not getting service or maybe someone was speeding or a damage of something, some private property or something. Well, you can use that tool to use essentially a geographic area to search that area. Working with the map, you can go between a street view and a satellite view. So this is really helpful if you're getting in close and you're wanting to maybe look at the parking lot or looking at the building structure. You can switch between the street view and more of a satellite view. There's a number of things across the top that allow you to interact with the map and the vehicle. So, for example, there's this trace option. This just shows a trace behind the vehicle. It's sort of a temporary, just to give you, especially if you're zoomed out, to see where vehicles, the direction they're going. Follow selected is another one. Follow selected, it's based on the vehicle that you have selected in your list. And if you have that checked, it essentially continues to keep the map centered on that vehicle. So, if you don't want to, you want to uncheck that if you're wanting to more look at all your vehicles. Otherwise, it's always going to sort of center and follow that specific vehicle that you have in your list. The area search, you just click that area search or proof of presence tool, and you drag a box over that area of interest. And then what it does is it brings up this dialog or form here, and then you can pick your date range. So between a certain date range or times, and you can hit the search option, and it'll find any vehicles and or drivers within that window, and then you can draw that track and see a little bit more information. If you're interested in narrowing it down even further, you can pick the event rule. So in other words, you know that the specific issue that's come up is speeding. Well, you can pick speeding, and then it's only going to show speeding events within that area, for example. There's a number of useful tools within the Windows drop-down, one of which is called a street viewer. So it's based on the vehicle that you have selected. So you select a vehicle, and it's typically ones that are green, meaning they're actually moving, because then you can actually see over on the left here. You see your standard view, but with the street view option, you get an aerial view here above, and then you also get a windshield view. So this is handy if you're wanting to sort of see, what the driver's seeing, and get a different perspective, and you can sort of zoom around if you're familiar with, Google in terms of how you can go around and see where they're maybe parked or sitting. It just gives you a different perspective there. You can also use traffic. It does bring in real-time traffic into the system, so this is especially handy in very urban areas where you're maybe wanting to do some work in an area and you're wanting to avoid heavy traffic. It'll even show if there's construction or things like that, or road closures. So, for example, this red information is heavy traffic, whereas the green are clear. So you can sort of toggle between that information there. Okay, so let me, again, go back to our real view here. And so interacting with the map, and again, let me go back to my few vehicles. Those are turned off, so let me clear that. Go back here. All right. So if you're working in the office, you may have a mouse and with a roller. That's one of the easiest ways to sort of interact with the map. If you roll up, then you can zoom in. If you roll down, you zoom out. You can also double click on the map, and it simply goes into the map. You also have over on the left here, you have the ability to zoom this way. You can grab the map just by dragging around that way. So variety of ways of zooming in. If you're pretty far out and you're wanting to get into an area, there's on the toolbar itself, there's zoom area. And this, you just drag, you click on the upper left and then you let go, and then it goes right into that specific area. Right next to that tool is a zoom out, so that goes to the full extent of your vehicles. If I want to go back to where I was before, I can hit this zoom to last. If I'm wanting to maybe investigate a specific area here, we can get in. Let me turn on my satellite view here. So I can turn on the satellite view, and perhaps I want to look at an address. I can drag and drop this, and it'll give me an address of that location as well as the latitude and longitude. So again, this is great if you're wanting to go and investigate. Just as a note, you can also put the address, you can put an address. So if you get a call, you can enter the address down below in the lower left or intersection, and it'll zoom to the map, putting in an address or intersection as well. Let me see. So this clears your map, so it'll clear any tracks or anything that you've done. Is this clear option? Let me turn off my satellite here. So let me show you the area search or proof of presence tool here. And I'm going to go up to the Husky Stadium if any of you are familiar with the Seattle area. I'm going to turn on my satellite view. So just as an example here, if let's say someone calls and they're complaining about someone doing donuts in the parking lot here at the Husky Stadium, well, I can use this area search option here, and then I can pick my time frame. So let's say I just want to pick the last few days, and then I want to run a search on that. So it's going to run out and search that. Of course, if you have views, it'll only search within that view for you. So I have 50 vehicles, so it's gone through and searched all those. If I just click on there, it gives me a general information, or I can right-click and I can draw the full track to get a perspective of where that vehicle drove through here, that area. So it shows me approximately when they came in. Probably not that vehicle because they were only in there for about a minute and they basically drove through. So just to give you an idea of how that works, I can export the data out in a variety of formats. I can also filter it down by, again, a variety of things, maybe speeding if it was speeding, or other things that I maybe want to narrow it down even further. I could do that as well. But that's a really handy tool. It's again this little box up here with the question mark there. And again, I'm going to use my clear. Just another tool is I don't know if you want to use this, but you can use it for either measuring distance or area, but it essentially just gives you a quick view of distance here, so 173.6 feet is another thing on the toolbar there. So this is, of course, the Seattle area, which is renowned for its traffic. So let me turn on the traffic here just to get an idea. It's actually not that bad. Pretty green at the moment, but the red areas are sort of heavy traffic. I guess probably if we were to check this out around 5 p.m., it would be a lot more red. But anyways, this gives you real-time traffic again, and so that's interacting with the map. And let's get into some of the nuts and bolts of the system here, of some of the alarms, events, and reports. So you can, with this system, there's a lot of out-of-the-box events, essentially, that come with it. Things like idling, or speeding, or trips, or stops, or harsh driving. So all those sort of things come with the system. And they're all configurable based on your parameters. So there's there's default setup for idling. So idling, and there's two types of idling. There's idling with engine on. In other words, the vehicle is parked and the engine is on, is one type of idling. There's another type of idling, which is essentially the vehicle is stopped and has not moved. And so we have two different types of reports depending on the type of idling that you're interested in. From maybe a fleet manager's perspective, they want to know if a vehicle hasn't been active for, say, a month. They may want to know that for utilization purposes. But someone else might be, there's cities out there that have, for example, green initiatives where they want to reduce idle time, meaning vehicles are essentially parked and the engine is on. So anyways, we can identify those, and they can show up on the map, and you can go back in time. Essentially, when the event starts, it's triggered and it shows live. But then when it closes, it's a central historic historic alarm or event that you can go back in time and view those events. And so you can pick your time frame again, just like before I was showing, or you can grab essentially the box, and whatever these colors here are associated with the event. So you can define those colors, and then they show up here. So blue being speeding, for example, red being idle, and you can have, again, a variety of different events with different colors. So you can at least see on a window here where those have occurred. And you can drag that little green box over the colors, and then it brings those events down in your list below here. And then when you click on the actual event, it shows it on the map. So it highlights it on the map, so idling, and you can add additional columns here based on what you're doing. So you can add speeding or other things in your window here that you're wanting to view, just like before. So that's this events window. Again, you can go back in time and view historical or see live events that are occurring. There is a variety of out-of-the-box events: idling, speeding, harsh driving. Harsh driving is typically braking, acceleration, cornering, right cornering, left cornering, and there's parameters or default set based on what sort of typical out there, but we can configure those, and you can actually set up multiple events based on either maybe different vehicle types or different departments maybe have different rules that they want. For example, speeding, I want it to only trigger if the vehicle is going 10 miles over the speed limit, or I want it to be triggered at 7 miles over the speed limit. Trips are essentially keeping track of all your miles and other information that's being captured automatically. So stop here, and then you drive, and then you stop here. It's keeping track of all of that, and that's all in reports. And then stops are basically whenever the vehicle stops, or the driver, you can capture information about when they arrive, the total duration, and when they depart. And so the difference between known stops and unknown stops are known stops are things that we can import into the system, being points of interest. So, for example, maybe all of your organization's buildings we want to import in there and name those like water department and then transportation and parks department. We can import those in, and that way when your vehicles arrive at those, it's automatically getting you can get reports based on those known locations, and it's in the report. And those could be other things like assets or other things that you want to import in the system and just have the system automatically capture data about when vehicles arrive and depart. Unknown stops are essentially all those stops where you haven't imported information in, but those could be just keeping track, and then what it does is it puts an address in there in the report instead of an actual name like a fuel station or a building name or et cetera. If you're wanting, so there's those points of interest, but then geofences are really getting down into a boundary. And the boundary can be used for really two purposes. It can be used for a violation, being the vehicle is not supposed to leave a boundary or it's not supposed to go into a boundary, is one method where you can receive, say, email notifications or SMS notifications on a vehicle leaving or departing those areas. Or it can be also used for capturing time in or outside the area. So in other words, you could have districts, or you could have project areas that are named, or you can have some geographic boundary essentially that you want reports based on those boundaries. So maybe a good example might be, I want to know all of the districts, the miles swept within the districts, or all the district total miles plowed. Well, we can capture that information automatically based on those boundaries that are in the system, and then just the vehicle, obviously the vehicle driving is in those boundaries, so we're keeping track of the time. So just something to keep in mind is, and those can be imported in based on existing boundaries you have, or you can actually create those boundaries within the application itself as well. So I'm going to cover reports first before we pop back in. So I'm going to cover the events and alarms and then reports, and then we'll go and look at both events and alarms, events and reports together. So again, just like the events, there's a lot of out-of-the-box reports that come in the system, and you can add and remove and configure these reports to your specific needs. So some of the basics are trip and idle, so it gives you a summary of all the trip, the miles that the vehicles have driven by vehicle or by driver, and the idle time, and some basic things like maximum speed, etc. Some other things like time on site. Again, that's just giving you based on the vehicle's arrival. We have a lot of other reports for more fleet management or fleet maintenance, so things like vehicle utilization reports, helpful for fleet managers so they can, if they're looking at purchasing a vehicle, they can run this report and see where maybe vehicles are underutilized. There's other like maintenance reports and so forth. Geofence violation reports, speeding and harsh driving reports, and productivity reports as well. So here's a couple examples. Here's the trip and idle. So this is summarizes by each vehicle type. And then it gives you, for that vehicle, based on your time frame, so if it's daily that you run it gives you a daily, or it could be weekly or monthly, etc. Gives you a breakdown of, again, when they start, when they stop, total distance, and just some information about duration of idle versus trip. So some cases you may want, if they're doing a lot of driving and they're supposed to be driving, you may want to know that idle time is less and they should be driving, or if they're actually stopping at maybe sites like in doing inspections, maybe it should be more doing actual idle time because they're supposed to be maybe inspecting houses or something. So it just gives you a quick summary for that vehicle. Here's the time on site report example. So again, based on, it could be on driver or based on vehicle. and then where they stop. So, for example, this is a known stop of a main office, and it gives the date, each date, and then it gives the arrival time and departure and total time on site. And again, that can be run based on daily, weekly, monthly, etc. Here's a utilization report. So this sort of summarizes by all your vehicles and gives days in use, total trips, total miles, and average miles per day. Speeding report. So a speeding report gives you where vehicles have been speeding, and then in the report, just as a note, there's a link for each event where you can click on the report and actually it'll go to the map. So it'll give you a map as well as the report information. And just as a note, there's other columns here that are not showing, but things like the actual speed limit shows, and then what the vehicle actually speed was that was over, the road type. So we do actual speed limit. So in other words, residential obviously is a different speed limit than a highway speed. So it'll get down to specific road, designated road speed limits. And then we have sort of ad hoc report capability where you can create and customize your own reports. So in other words, this allows you to combine events and define specific vehicles and define specific time frames that you may just want to run as ad hoc. So in other words, I want to, within this geofence boundary, I want to know all of the idling, which vehicles are idling for, and then run that report within, last week for these specific vehicles and run that, and then it just gives me a report real specific to my specific thing that I'm interested in at that moment. So it's very flexible. Just as a note, on all of the reports can be set up on a schedule to be emailed to you as well, or supervisors and so forth. So you don't have to necessarily come into the system and run the reports. Once you figure out your report, if you know that you want the report every Friday of the week, you just set that up on a schedule, and then it just comes into your inbox in whatever format, PDF or Excel or HTML or whatever format that you want it to go into. So let's pop over and I'll show you some of this information here. So, so down below here we have the Events tab. So if I click the Events tab, this gives me a quick view, and so this is live. This is real time. Things are happening right now. Events are occurring. There was 3 when we first saw it. Now there's 1. So those actually closed. So one of them I saw was a speeding one, and so that was just a quick speeding one that came through here. This one's basically a geofence violation one where they went outside of the geofence, and this is giving me sort of real time. They've been out of the boundary now for 4 minutes. And so if I click that, it gives me a general location of where that is occurring right now. And if I come over to my geofence, I can actually turn that on and get an idea of where that is. So if I zoom in here, so what this is this particular customer has a service area boundary, and they don't want their vehicles to go outside of that service area boundary. And so this just gives sort of a real-time view of this. Of course, this is all going in reports as well. But notice the color. So purple is essentially the geofence. Is going outside the geofence. There's a yellow one that's just occurring right now, which is the speeding one, and that's yellow. So notice yellow and purple, so I can visually see things that are going on. Here's that one right there, is the speeding one. But if I want to go back in time, and I want to take a look, I can grab this and sort of hover and go back in time historically and view these events historically. So this gives me a quick view of different types of things that happened back, and I can sort of scroll through those. And again, as I click, it the map for the location. If you see a big number like this, for example, that means there's actually 4 events in that area. And as you zoom in, they sort of break out, and then you can sort of see the more detailed information here about that. So that one's in a geofence. And if I click on the map, it then highlights the one in my list down below here as well. So you can interact between the event on the map and the one that's in your list down below there. So, and again, and the geofences can be brought in here in a variety of ways. You can create a circle, a polygon, a route. So you can have a route. You can use routes. You can also import the geofence in from if you have existing boundaries that you want to bring in. And then you just basically name them how you want to name those. And we will be covering in another session probably just on geofences and points of interest at some point. So if you're wanting more detail on the geofences, that'll probably be another session that we'll cover. So all of these events are, there's what's called event rules. And again, there's a lot of out-of-the-box events that come with the system here. But you can add your own event rules, and there's I mean, again, that's a whole other session on all of the different types of events you can do. You can, based on drivers specifically, so let's just pick on actual speed limit, the actual speed limit event, for example. You have the ability to name it what you want. You can define which vehicles or drivers that it's associated with. You can set it up on a schedule. So if you only want to know that it's outside working hours, you can set that event to be just triggered outside of normal business hours, or you only want it to be set up to be during business hours. Well, you can do that based on the schedule of when that's actually triggered there. It's essentially the speeding is their default is 7 miles over the speed limit for these different types of road types. You can set up the notification, so you can make it just so that, again, it goes into a report, or you can also set it up to be sent into via email to somebody. So, for example, if I wanted to add a notification here, add one to be email. So there's SMS, email here. So I just pick email, and then all I do is pick the recipient that I want. So it might be a maintenance manager or a supervisor here. And then I could put the subject of the email and exactly what goes in the email. So I could have a map go into the email, or I could have the, what the name of the vehicle is and the driver. All that can be added into that notification area. And then the presentation is how you want it. That's going back to that color that I showed you in the event tab. So you can change the color to have a specific color so you can see visually where the event is occurring, so you can change that. You can decide whether you want it to show on the map, so you can disable it from showing on the map, but just have it basically be in reports only. You can have it, you can have custom icons for that. So, for example, you might load in your own graphics for specific, or you have a whole catalog of graphics for how you want it to display on the map. You can have a label on it. So a lot of flexibility with these events and how they work. If you notice the ones that are red versus green, all the green ones are essentially live on the map, whereas the reds are just basically going into reports. They're not interactive with the map itself. On the reports, I've run a few reports. Again, there's a long list of reports that are available, and based on your permissions or role, you can set up who sees which reports. But here's an example of a utilization report. It gives me a list of all the vehicles and the days in use for basically the month of December here. I can see maybe these are underutilized, only a couple days, a day or two. So if I'm looking at purchasing a vehicle, I may not want to do that yet because I have a few vehicles that are maybe underutilized. Here's a report that shows based on vehicle and driver. So I can get not only the vehicle but also the driver that's associated with it. Gives me information about that. I can have information like total distance, odometer, so we can add columns onto the report. Again, that are important to you. You can easily email this to maybe someone. So you run the report, you can click email and then send it to somebody. You can send it in a variety of formats, HTML, CSV, PDF, etc. So let me just run a report as an example here. So, we covered the geofence. So I'm going to run a geofence violation report here, and I'm going to pick this week and just generate this here. And so, again, I can pick my week. I can pick a day. There's a variety of options here: daily, weekly, monthly. I can do a custom one if it's, say, a quarter. I want to do a 3 month. You can basically define the time frame that you want that report to be run on. So this is going through the geofence and looking at, in this case, there's 50 vehicles, so it's going to look for this week and run through and find all of the geofence violations within that week. If you have, just as a best practices, if you have, let's say a monthly or a quarterly, you may want to set it up on a schedule, basically to be emailed to you. So that way, you come in the morning, it's already set and ready to roll. And I'll show you how to do that here in just a second. So here's the geofence violation report here. So this gives me a breakdown here of 5 vehicle type and where there was a geofence violation. If I click on the link over to the left, it then can show me where that went outside the geofence here. So this is that basically where they went outside the geofence there as an example. If I want to set these reports up on a schedule, I can just go to Manage Reports, and then I can come down here, for example, to this geofence and go Edit, and then just set it up on a schedule. So there's this email schedule option here, and here's where I can pick it up to be set, at which day of the week I want it to be sent, which day, say, every Friday. I can pick time that report comes, so 7 a.m. I can pick the specific recipient, and then I can pick the format, and then if I save that, essentially that report just gets emailed to that recipient or recipients. It can be multiple recipients, and versus coming in here and actually running it. So I know that's a lot to cover, and we're running out of time here, so I want to at least come back in and give folks some time to ask any questions. Again, this is an introductory training session. If your organization would like a specific training session, please let me know. We can work with your organization and run a presentation for your group. But does anyone have any questions so far on this? Everybody's on mute right now. That's why you're not asking questions, right? But I do want to keep everybody's time, be considerate of time. This session was for an hour, and we've run out of time. I'd be happy to stay longer if you have additional questions. I want to let anybody go if you. We've covered at least the main part of this introductory session here. Anybody want to hang out? Have any other questions? Again,
I have a question.
Okay.
How is it connecting from the truck? Is it GPS?
Yes. So it's a GPS device that goes into the truck or vehicle, and it basically communicates. So we provide the GPS unit. And that goes
Where does the GPS unit sit?
So it depends on, there's different types of GPS units. So there's some that can go into the OBD port, which is typically in the lower underneath the dash. The other option is the wired option. The wired option goes also under the dash, but then it's wired underneath. The one that goes in the OBD port can also be basically you can use a splitter cable or an extension cable so you can keep the OBD port open. But either way, there's the device can be essentially underneath the dash and away from, kept away so that it's safe under the dash.
And it's using satellite technology?
Correct, yeah. So it communicates with the satellite to get the GPS that you're seeing, and we provide the whole connectivity as part of the package. So we have Verizon essentially that we use, and it's a private, it's a VPN essentially that that device communicates and then sends that information. So both the GPS information and the communication go through our Verizon tunnel that we provide.
Okay, well, we have a pretty spotty Verizon service here. What about if it's disconnected or it's not connected all day?
Yeah, so what it does is it actually stores the information on the device until a connection is made, and then it will once a connection is made, it then basically redraws or draws that information afterwards. So the GPS is communicating. The GPS is always connecting and always getting information. But if it loses actual service, it stores forward until service is made. So we too, in Boise here, there's some, if you go into canyons or things, it will, sometimes it goes up, you go up north, you might lose service for just a bit, and then once you get service again, it essentially refreshes that information. So may I ask who this is that's asking the question?
This is Eric Green.
Oh, okay, Eric.
So we have really spotty service. So even our cell phones all the time have problems connecting. So I guess then we're really not getting live data then. So you could have a period of time when somebody's working on a leak or something, they could be down in the valley for a couple hours. So you're not going to have, there's no way of having offline data, right? So we can't see anything. We just know that their truck's not connected.
Well, and we can work with other service if other services as well, but typically, yeah, I mean it'll essentially store the information, so you'll have that information, and if it's lost, it'll show that location of where it was, and then once it's connected, and we do have customers all over the country that are using this, and they, typically it doesn't last that long. It just is a short period if it happens at all, but.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else have questions? And Eric, I can follow up with you too, and we can cover that in a little bit more. I can discuss that a little bit more with you in terms of options there with that.
Yeah, and I'm also interested in the CityWorks API. So yeah, if we could talk about those two things.
Sure. Okay. Connection. All right. Anyone else have any other questions? No? Okay. Well, Eric, I'll follow up with you and everyone else. Thanks for joining this. Be on the lookout. We'll be sending these again every month, and we try to get them out about 2 weeks beforehand, and then we start to send more reminders. So the next session we might cover probably either maybe geofences, points of interest, or maybe integration. But anyways, we'll send out. Just be on the lookout for the next training session. And thanks again for your interest. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
you.